Welcome to the first in a series of TypeScript for C# developers videos, starting with let and const. In C#, today's most common way of declaring a variable would be with var, so we can go num likes is 100 and do console.writeLine num likes, save that, run the script, and we get 100. Very good. In TypeScript, var is highly discouraged, so most people would recommend you use let for something like this. 100 console.num likes, and we can run the app and it says 100. Very good. So obviously num likes can be changed. 200, run the app, 200, and here we can go num likes is 200. Very good. So if we didn't want to be able to change the value of num likes in C#, we'd use a constant. However, there is a limitation in C# where you actually have to declare the type here. Now you can't change the value of num likes after setting it. In TypeScript it's a similar concept. You can make something a constant and then it won't let you change the value afterwards. In TypeScript, if you wanted to use a default value for a variable, you could do let num subs and write console.log num subs. So let's see what this prints out. 100 and undefined. By using let, you don't have to provide a value. The equivalent in C# would be something like this, num subs. Problem here is that you can't declare var num subs. You have to provide a default value. And then console.writeLine would be 0, of course. You can't do the same thing in TypeScript. You can't just say that this is a number, because as soon as you try to use it, it will throw an error saying variable num subs is used before being assigned. So to fix this then, you would then have to provide a default value. One more thing they have in common is that you can't rely on a default value for a constant in C#, throws an error, and likewise consts in TypeScript also have to be initialized. So in summary, constants must be initialized and cannot change later, and use let for something that doesn't necessarily have to be initialized and can change later. Cheers. Let's talk about the primitive types in TypeScript. Let's start with the most simple Boolean type. In C#, this is obviously something like has liked, and then you can set has liked is true, true, and then do console.writeLine has liked. It says true. So far so good. In TypeScript then the equivalent would be let has liked is a Boolean. You can't just use bool, doesn't work. Boolean. You can do has liked is true, like so, and then do console.log has liked. And if we run it, we get true. So far so good. We can obviously join the assignments together like so. True equals true, which has no change in behavior. True, true. Next up, let's take a look at numbers. In C#, we obviously have 32-bit ints, which can be something like 1000, and then we have long 64 bits, which can be something like obviously the number of subscribers to this amazing channel. Let's overflow that 32, and obviously this is picking this up as 64. Over in TypeScript, this is slightly different, so we get likes. Now number is what you would use here, and number can be an integer or a floating point. We would set this to 1000. We can do let subs. Now, because this is over the 32-bit limit, we have to use something called a big int, not a long. And then when you set the value of a big int, you need to put your massive number on with an n at the end. And if we wanted to join the assignments, again, we would just do it like this. Now let's take a look at strings. If we have this handsome chap called Ted here over in C# land, we can then obviously do the string interpolation. So we can say chap has likes likes, like so. Then we can do console.writeLine message. If we run this in C#, obviously we get true, Ted has 1000 likes. Fantastic. Over in TypeScript land, if we wanted to do this, we would do let chap is a string, say that the chap is Ted, and then the string interpolation in TypeScript is a little bit different. You don't use double quotes, you don't use single quotes, you use a backtick, which for me is on the top right of the keyboard. And then you can write the interpolated string like this. Chap has likes, likes, like so, and then do console.log message and run the app. True, Ted has 1000 likes. Not quite true, but it does the job. In C#, if you wanted to do an enum, you would do enum substatus, for example, and we'd do this as unknown, curious, subscribed, not subscribed, like so. We'd say that the substatus is substatus.subscribed, and we do console.writeLine, and we'll cast the substatus to an int so we can show what number has been assigned. We can run the application and we'll see that it is assigned a 2. Over in TypeScript land, it is actually strangely familiar. It is almost, well, the syntax is pretty much the same. So we do unknown, curious, subscribed, like so. We can then do let substatus is substatus.subscribed, and we can do console.log substatus. Now when we run this in TypeScript, by default it comes up with a number. You don't have to cast it to an int. But what number does it use? Obviously it's using the same rules as C#, where it does 0, 1, 2, 3. 0, 1, 2, 3. So if we set this to 10, set this over on TypeScript to 10 as well, and run the app again, we can see that the result is the same, 12 and 12. With C#, if we wanted to get the string representation to send out to console write line, we'd remove the cast, like so. Now it says subscribed. In TypeScript, there is a secret array accessor that has been added to the enum type itself. So if we do substatus and use the integer to access it, and run the app again, it now says subscribed. To do an array in C#, you declare it a little bit like this. You int, and then you define your initialize variable, then you define your initialize values like so, with curly brackets, and we can do console.writeLine, and to print this out we'll have to do string.join like so. Array, save, and if we run this application we can see it prints 1, 2, 3, 4. So far so good. To do this in TypeScript, do let array is a number, and we set the initialize values using square brackets this time instead of curly ones. Then we can do console.log array like so. And if we run the application, we can see it does 1, 2, 3, 4. So far so good. You can also use this generic version here, which does exactly the same thing. Cool. Let's take a look at tuples. A tuple in C# looks something like this. New tuple of string and int, and we'll give it the value subs and 1000. Very good. And we can do console.writeLine stats. This will then print out something like so. Subs 1000. Very good. To do this in TypeScript, it's slightly different. We do let stats string number, and then we initialize it the same way as the array, and we can do console.stats. Very nice. If we run the app, it prints out subs 1000. The order of the types are important, so if we do number, it's going to shout at us like this. This is also the same behavior as C#. If the types are incorrect, it starts shouting at you. Cheers!